My 8-year-old whispered. They'll take your money tonight. I set a trap. Grandpa, my parents are going to take your money after the party today, my 8-year-old granddaughter whispered to me. And the words hit like a thunderclap, smashing whatever picture I still had of a loving, uncomplicated family. I've always been the trusting grandfather, the guy who shows up, pitches in, and assumes the best. So I left early that night, hiding the shock behind a face that looked like plain old fatigue. What I set in motion after that, a quiet little plan to answer their betrayal, stunned everyone. I beat them at their own game, and they won't forget it. Before we dive in, do me a favor. If you're listening, tap subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, I know what you're thinking. Come on, Dad. But hear me out. Jason's voice cracked over the phone that Saturday morning, slicing the quiet like a dull blade. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. 7 a.m. Calls weren't Jason's style, not with that shaky tone I recognized from his teenage years. The same sound he made after he'd dented my truck. What sounds strange, son? I settled back into my kitchen chair, watching steam curl off my coffee while the early light laid gold squares across yesterday's unread paper. Well, Brooke really wants. Look, we both think you should definitely come to Mia's birthday party today. He rushed the words like he'd rehearsed them, but lost the rhythm halfway through. Something cold settled in my chest. Since when did they need to talk me into seeing my own granddaughter? Jason, when have I ever missed one of Mia's birthdays? No, that's not what I meant. He hesitated. I heard Brooke in the background, sharp, insistent, stage whispering. It's just, Brooke's been planning this for weeks, and she specifically asked me to call and make sure you're coming. I stirred my coffee, watching cream swirl into tiny hurricanes. Brooke specifically asked. The same Brooke who usually treated my presence like something you check off a list. That's thoughtful of her, I said. Yeah, she's really excited about it, Jason replied, his laugh thin and metallic. The party starts at 2, but maybe you could come a little early? We wanted to talk about some family stuff. The spoon tapped the mug as I set it down. Family stuff. In 3 years of being a widower, nothing labeled family stuff had ever needed a special pre-meeting. What kind of family stuff? Oh, planning, future things. Brooke's got some ideas about how we can all be more involved. I walked to the window with the phone to my ear and watched Mrs. Collins across the street watering her flower boxes. Brooke with ideas about family involvement. This from the woman who spent last Christmas dinner scrolling her phone every 5 minutes. That sounds nice, I told him, keeping my voice level, while every business instinct I had started blinking red. 30 years of reading people across conference tables taught me when someone was selling something they didn't even believe. Great. So you'll be here early? Maybe around 1:30? I glanced at the fridge where Mia's latest drawing hung next to my shopping list. A crooked house, stick figures labeled Grandpa, Daddy, Mommy, and me in purple crayon. Since Linda died, that little girl has been the brightest spot in my whole world. Of course I'll come early. I wouldn't miss her day for anything. Perfect. And Dad? Jason's voice dropped. Just keep an open mind about what we want to discuss, okay? It's about making sure everyone's taken care of. The line went dead before I could ask what everyone's taken care of was supposed to mean. I stared at the phone, then set it beside the untouched newspaper. Something was off. Jason had that same guilty undertone I remembered from when he was 8 and swiped cash from Linda's purse for candy. Only this felt bigger than kid trouble. I poured fresh coffee and tried to shake the feeling. Maybe Brooke really was trying to improve things between us. Maybe I was reading too much into a simple invitation. But I couldn't stop rolling that phrase around in my head, making sure everyone's taken care of. In my experience, when folks say that, they usually mean taking care of themselves first. I looked at Mia's drawing and smiled despite the unease. Whatever Jason and Brooke wanted to hash out could wait until after I celebrated my granddaughter turning 8. Some moments matter more than adult complications. Still, I made a mental note to listen very carefully. 20 minutes later, I was in my closet, staring at shirts Linda would never see me wear again. The blue Oxford dragged me straight back to her funeral, Brooke whispering about all this space while we buried my wife. Even then, something in her tone sounded like she was running numbers. I took the shirt off the hanger and caught my reflection. $70,000. That's what I'd given them in the past 3 years. Mortgage payments, car loans, Mia's private school tuition. Linda would have called it overboard, But she also believed Mia deserved better than her parents could manage alone. My wallet felt heavy as I dressed. 3 credit cards were maxed for emergencies. Jason's transmission that somehow became a full engine rebuild. Brooke's temporary grocery help that turned into a monthly line item. Each request came with Jason's ashamed explanations and Brooke's perfectly timed gratitude. On my way to grab the car keys, I passed another drawing on the fridge, our last fishing trip, 2 stick figures by a blue crayon lake, both smiling. Best day ever, Grandpa. In purple marker. That's when Brooke's recent suggestion hit me again. 3 weeks earlier, in that same kitchen, she'd looked around and said, "Frank, don't you think this house is getting too big for you? There are some wonderful assisted living places where you wouldn't have to worry about upkeep." Jason changed the subject to Mia's softball, but Brooke's eyes lingered on the granite we'd picked out, the appliances Linda and I chose together. That same calculating look she wore at the funeral. I scooped up my keys and heard Linda's last clear words in my head. "Promise me you'll always look out for Mia, but keep a close eye on Jason. He's soft, and soft people make dangerous choices when someone pushy is whispering in their ear." Back then I assumed she meant drinking buddies or some goofy get-rich scheme. Now I wondered if Linda had seen something in Brooke I'd missed. The way money talks always started with Mia's needs, so I'd feel selfish questioning any of it. The garage door hummed open, and the morning sun spilled across my Mercedes. Linda's car still sat in her spot, covered and pristine. I kept paying on it for months after she passed, like not canceling the payment could keep her here. Maybe that's what they were counting on, my reluctance to say no where family was concerned. The grandpa who'd rather pay than disappoint. The man who trusted instead of verified. But 4 decades in construction taught me to check the foundation before I built anything important. I backed out slow, my house shrinking in the rear view, and I had the feeling that after tonight, after whatever conversation they had planned, I'd see everything differently. First, though, I needed a present for my granddaughter. Something special, maybe the last gift I'd give her before things changed. River Point Mall buzzed with Saturday energy when I parked near the main entrance. It was 8:15, and families were already streaming into the toy stores. The Lego architecture shelves pulled me in. Mia's been hooked on buildings since her class went to the Space Needle last month. The Statue of Liberty set caught my eye. Challenging, but not crazy. $180 felt fair for something that'd light up her brain for weeks. "Excellent choice, sir," the young clerk said as he rang it up. "My daughter loves that series. Want it gift-wrapped?" "Please. It's for my granddaughter's 8th. Next stop, sporting goods." Mia had hinted she wanted a real bike, not the tiny pink one she'd outgrown. The Trek by the window looked perfect. Light frame, easy hand brakes, reflective strips. $320. Her face would make it worth every penny. After loading the boxed bike into my SUV, I checked my watch, 9:10. Plenty of time for one more stop. "Frank, what a nice surprise." Pat Collins materialized beside my car, clutching a bookstore bag. My neighbor of 15 years looked genuinely pleased to see me. Silver hair neat as always. "Morning, Mrs. Collins. Starting early?" "Oh, you know me. I like to beat the crowds." She nodded toward the mall. "I assume you're on birthday duty." Jason mentioned Mia's party when I saw him last week. "He mentioned it?" I closed the hatch. "Where'd you see him?" "Downtown, Tuesday morning, I think." Brooke was with him, and they were coming out of Heritage First Bank with a stack of papers. She chuckled. Looked very official. Probably refinancing something, the way young folks do. Tuesday. 4 days ago. Jason hadn't breathed a word about bank business during his jittery call. Then again, people handle finances without making announcements. "Probably routine," I said, shifting my bags. "Of course, dear. Not my concern," she said, patting my arm. "Give that sweet girl my love." She bustled off, leaving me with a fuzzy unease. Bank papers Tuesday. Nervous phone call Saturday. Maybe a coincidence. Jason is always juggling some money crisis. I shrugged it off and headed to the florist near the east entrance. Brooke always liked flowers, and white roses would be a thoughtful nod to the party's hostess. The florist, a woman with soil under her nails, wrapped a dozen long stems in silver paper. "They're beautiful," she said, adjusting the ribbon. "Special occasion. My granddaughter's party. These are for her mom." "How thoughtful. She'll love them." $28 for something that would wilt in a week, but Brooke's pleased expression would be worth it. Small gestures help keep family waters calm, especially when there's an undertow. By 9:30, my SUV held close to $600 worth of celebration. The Lego set, the bike, the roses, and a card I'd picked out. This is what grandpas do. We spoil our grandkids and love every second of it. Driving home, I kept replaying Mrs. Collins's offhand comment. Jason and Brooke at the bank with paperwork. Serious faces. Official business he hadn't mentioned. Plenty of legitimate reasons. Insurance updates, refinancing, college savings for Mia. Still, as I turned into my driveway, that small voice asked why Jason sounded so nervous if everything was above board. After wrapping Mia's gifts and grabbing a quick lunch, I pulled up to Jason's place right at 2. The front door swung open before I could knock. Frank, Brooke sang my name, arms wide like we hadn't seen each other in months. You look wonderful today. The enthusiasm was new. Normally, Brooke offered a polite smile, a quick hug, and vanished into the kitchen. Today she touched my arm twice in one sentence, eyes bright like stage lights. Thanks, Brooke. The party looks lovely, I said, carrying in the boxed bike and the bag with the Lego set. Streamers draped doorways and balloons filled corners, much more than previous birthdays. Dad, there he is. Jason boomed from the living room, loud as a carnival barker. Come meet Ryan from work. Ryan, this is my amazing father I've told you about. Amazing father? Usually, when Jason talks about me at work, it's old school this or won't retire that. Today he smacked my shoulder with theatrical cheer, laughing too loud in the decorated hall. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Harrisons chatted by the fireplace. Mrs. Parker sat carefully on the couch, eyes taking in everything. Daniel and Olivia Reed helped their boy Jacob set up party games on the coffee table. Grandpa, Mia ran straight to me, her real smile cutting through the make-believe like sunlight. She wrapped me in a hug, and for a second the world felt normal. Happy birthday, kiddo. I handed her the gift bag. This one first, then the big surprise. She peeled the paper off the Lego set, eyes going wide at the Statue of Liberty on the box. When she looked up to thank me, something flickered, sadness. Gone in a blink when Brooke swept in. Isn't Grandpa generous, honey? Say a proper thank you. Thank you, Grandpa. It's really cool. Her voice held honest excitement mixed with something else. Guilt? Worry? An 8-year-old shouldn't sound weighed down on her own birthday. Jason steered me toward the kitchen where Ryan Cooper nursed a beer and talked cars. The chat felt ordinary enough, but Jason kept jumping in with overblown compliments about my business wisdom and family leadership, like he was reading cue cards. Frank knows everything about building strong relationships, he announced. He's taught me all about trust and loyalty. Strange topics for cake and balloons, especially delivered with that wired intensity. Ryan nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable. Brooke reappeared with a plate of appetizers, inserting herself between me and the room. Frank, you simply must try these canapes. I made them with your sophisticated taste in mind. My sophisticated taste? Brooke never noticed my preferences beyond making sure there was plenty of food. Now she hovered, topping off my wine before it emptied, and asking if I was comfortable every few minutes. Across the room, I watched Mia open cards from school friends with careful, almost mechanical politeness. When Jacob asked about her new Lego set, she smiled and nodded, but the usual spark wasn't there. She's growing up fast, Mrs. Parker murmured, settling beside me. Such a thoughtful child. Last week she asked me if grandparents and parents ever disagree about important decisions. My wine stopped halfway to my lips. What did you tell her? That families work through differences with love and honesty, Mrs. Parker said, watching Mia with concern, though she seemed troubled in a way most kids aren't. Across the room, Jason checked his watch for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Brooke drifted to him immediately. They shared a quick look, a silent coordination I'd been noticing all afternoon. Brief eye contact, tiny nods, perfectly timed interruptions whenever a conversation leaned toward money or the future. The afternoon stretched on with careful choreography. Every smile felt staged, every laugh a hair too loud, every display of affection designed for an audience. Only Mia's moments with me felt real, even with that shadow behind her eyes. As the party wound down and folks started gathering their things, Jason caught my eye with a casual wave. Dad, hang back after everyone leaves, okay? Brooke and I have been looking forward to that family chat. The forced cheers sat heavy on my shoulders, like the air before a storm. I excused myself, mentioning the bathroom. Brooke jumped up to give directions I didn't need, her concern coming off more rehearsed than real. Walking down the hall lined with family photos, I heard small footsteps behind me. Grandpa, Mia's whisper barely rose above the music. I turned. She glanced toward the living room to make sure we were alone. The birthday girl who should have been buzzing with excitement looked like she'd been carrying a weight all day. What is it, sweetheart? I knelt so we were eye to eye. She's got Linda's serious look when something matters. I have to tell you something. About Mom and Dad. My chest tightened. What about them, honey? They're going to take your money tonight. The words poured out like she'd practiced. After everyone goes home. I heard them talking last night when I was supposed to be sleeping. The hallway tilted. I grabbed the door frame and kept my face calm for her sake. What exactly did you hear? Mom said you have too much money for an old man living alone. Her voice dropped even lower. She told Dad they were going to fix that tonight. Dad sounded scared, but Mom said the papers from the bank would make everything legal. Papers from the bank. Mrs. Collins's Tuesday sighting snapped into place. The business part of my brain, dormant too long, roared awake. Did they say anything else? I kept my tone gentle. Dad kept saying, what if he finds out? And Mom said it would be too late by then. Her eyes brimmed. Grandpa, I don't want them to take your money. You're the only one who listens to me. I hugged her, feeling that small body shake. Linda's granddaughter, carrying secrets no child should hold. The betrayal cut deeper knowing they'd planned it in earshot of an 8-year-old. Listen carefully, I whispered into her hair. You did the right thing. But for now, this stays our secret. Can you do that? She nodded. Are you going to stop them? Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to handle it. I held her at arm's length so she could see I meant it. But we're going back to your party now, and we're acting normal. Can you be brave for me? I think so. She wiped her nose. Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad? The question hit like a punch. Mia, nothing your parents do could change how much I love you. Nothing. Relief washed over her, and I got the first real smile from her all day. I love you too, Grandpa. Hand in hand, we headed back toward the noise, but everything was different now. The son I raised, the daughter-in-law I supported, the family I trusted, now seen through the lens of a plan to gut me legally. Back in the living room, Jason waved with that same phony enthusiasm. I finally understood the performance. I slid into conversations with the ease 40 years of negotiating gave me, while keeping a running tally of every look between Jason and Brooke. Mrs. Parker chatted about her garden while Jason checked his watch again. Brooke glided over, their eye contact now obviously coordinated. They were managing me, keeping me comfortable, engaged, and most importantly, present for whatever they had lined up once the guests were gone. Frank, how about more wine? Brooke touched my arm with practiced concern. You look a little pale. Are you okay? Learning your family plans to steal your life's work will do that to a man. I gave a tired smile that didn't take much acting. Just a slight headache. I'm fine. Her expression flickered, relief mixed with calculation. A tired grandpa would be easier to steer than an alert one. For the next hour, I played my part. Gracious grandfather, generous patriarch, maybe not as sharp as he used to be. I accepted their attention, praised their hosting, and studied their moves like a chess opponent's mid-game. Jason deflected any talk of money or retirement the second it came up. Brooke redirected conversations toward my house, my health, future living arrangements. They controlled the flow, making sure nothing bumped into the story they planned to sell me later. Around 5:30, as the light shifted and people started gathering coats, I announced I should head out. This headache isn't getting better. The effect was instant. Jason and Brooke exchanged a look edged with real panic. Dad, wait, Jason said, stepping between me and the door. We really wanted to talk about those important family matters. You promised to stay. Another time, I said, sticking to the weary act. I need to rest. But, Frank, Brooke stepped closer, urgency creeping in. We have something special planned for tonight. We've been preparing for weeks. Preparing for weeks. The bank papers. The legal plan. Their timeline was slipping. I'm sure it can wait until tomorrow, I said gently. Family isn't going anywhere. Jason flushed. Actually, Dad, there are some time-sensitive issues. Financial matters that can't wait. Financial matters that can't wait. I filed the exact phrasing away with the rest of today's intelligence. Tomorrow, son. I promise. I turned to Mia, who stood watching, worried. I knelt for what might be our last uncomplicated hug for a while. Thank you for a wonderful party, sweetheart. Thank you for my presents, Grandpa, she whispered, squeezing tight. I love you so much. I love you too. I added softly in her ear. Everything's going to be okay. Standing, I felt Jason's hand on my shoulder, heavier than necessary, almost restraining. Dad, please. Just give us 1 hour. 1 hour to make important family decisions. I looked into my son's eyes and saw not the kid I'd raised, but a desperate man whose greed had crowded out what love was left. It stung more than I expected. Another time, Jason. I'm going home. They watched from the doorway while Brooke whispered in his ear, both of them buzzing with frustrated tension. In my car, I sat a moment, letting the mask drop. My family had planned to rob me. Tonight, with legal paperwork and a smile. Back home, the silence felt different, less peaceful, more focused. I went straight to my office, the room where I built Walker Construction from one truck and too much stubbornness. 40 years of documents live in the wall safe behind Linda's portrait. I spun the dial, 181959, Linda's birthday. Fitting, that memory would help protect what we built. The papers told a story I should have read sooner. Bank statements showing how the asks crept from hundreds to thousands. Investment accounts worth more than Jason or Brooke guessed. Property deeds to rentals they didn't know about. And most important, receipts for every dime I'd poured into their lifestyle. 247 separate transactions. I document everything. It's how I did business. Mortgage payments, car repairs, medical bills, Mia's private school tuition. Each expense dressed up as an emergency or opportunity. With Linda's photo watching from the shelf, I finally saw the conditioning. The asks escalated on purpose, training me to say yes to bigger numbers. Brooke's assisted living talk wasn't about my well-being. It was recon for tonight's sting. Every mortgage check, every tuition payment. I told Linda's picture. They've been setting this up for months. My phone sat silent. Jason and Brooke were probably scrambling, trying to salvage their schedule without me there for the big reveal. The thought gave me a grim kind of satisfaction. I pulled out my card file and found Robert Bob Hayes' personal number, 20 years of friendship with the VP at Heritage First Bank. Bob knows I'm the detail-obsessed contractor who never missed a payment. More importantly, he knows what legal documents look like when they're being abused. It was 9:30 p.m. Too late to call, so I made it a first-thing priority for Sunday. Find out exactly what papers Jason and Brooke fetched and how to neutralize them. Next, I reviewed my will and trust. Standard stuff that left everything to Jason with money for Mia's education. Written back when I still believed my son led with integrity. That would change immediately. Amanda Carter, the notary who's handled my paperwork for years, is independent and discreet, and she's got no ties to any bank friends of Jason and Brooke. She went on tomorrow's list too. Spreading my statements like battle plans, I finally did the math $2. 3 million liquid, 3 rental properties, and my house, free and clear. A lot more than they assumed, and more than they could grab in one evening, even with a fast-tracked legal trick. But it wasn't about the dollars. It was about justice for an 8-year-old being dragged into grown-up messes. It was about making sure betrayal had a price. I heard Linda again. Watch Jason closely. Soft people make dangerous choices when someone forceful is whispering. Brooke had been whispering for 3 years, and Jason kept choosing greed over family. The phone lit up, Jason calling. I let it ring. Sunday morning brought the clarity a restless night hadn't. Over coffee, my business brain clicked into place, and the plan wrote itself. At 9 sharp, I called Bob Hayes. Bob, sorry to bug you on a Sunday, I said when he picked up. Been reviewing my portfolio. Wanted your take on consolidating a few things. Frank, always good to hear your voice, he said warmly. What's up? I'm thinking about simplifying, centralizing accounts. What are your current policies around financial assistance programs? Well, depends on the need, he said. Automated services or more comprehensive management. Perfect. Actually, I'm curious about power of attorney arrangements. Conservatorship, seen any of those lately? He paused, weighing confidentiality. Funny you ask. Just last week, I had a couple inquiring about guardianship for an elderly relative. My cup stopped halfway. Oh, Complicated, I assume. They were surprisingly prepared, Bob said. Had the conservatorship requirements down cold, documentation timelines, mental competency evaluations, court approvals. Very thorough folks. Thorough. My son and daughter-in-law had studied how to take my life over, neatly and legally. That's thoughtful of them. To help their family, I managed. They asked about expedited processes, emergency conservatorship, how to act fast if assets needed protection, he added. Knew the lingo better than some attorneys. Emergency conservatorship. Appreciate the insight, Bob, I said. Gives me a lay of the land. Anytime, Frank. For the record, you're sharper than half the guys I see. Hard to imagine you needing help for a long while. If only he knew how close I'd come yesterday. We said our goodbyes. I'd barely set the phone down when Jason called again. This time I answered, sounding worn down, like lifting the receiver took effort. Dad? Thank God, he started. I was worried when you left early. Are you feeling okay? Oh, Jason. I let my voice trail like the thoughts were sliding around. Terrible headaches. Can't seem to focus. That's not good. Maybe we should see a doctor. Brooke and I can take you this afternoon. Perfect. They were moving up their timeline, just like I wanted. That's thoughtful. I've been so confused lately. Don't worry. We'll handle everything. We'll be over in an hour. I spent the next 30 minutes prepping for the role of my life. Mussed my hair, put on an old cardigan that made me look smaller, practiced slower movements and little hesitations. When they pulled into the driveway, I was ready. Frank, we brought some papers that might help, Brooke announced as they settled in the living room. She carried a leather portfolio, expensive, professional, the kind lawyers like. Papers? I blinked, aiming for bewildered. What kind of papers? Jason leaned forward, earnest. Dad, we've been researching ways to help you manage things, finances, medical decisions, that kind of stuff. Manage. I rubbed my temples. Everything feels so complicated these days. Brooke opened the portfolio with practiced ease. These would give us power of attorney to help with banking, bills, appointments. Think of it like a backup system. The forms were professionally prepared, signature lines highlighted. Somebody had paid good money to make this theft look kind. It's all overwhelming, I murmured. I used to understand this better. That's why we should do it now, Brooke pressed. Before things get more confusing. Jason shifted. Dad, are you sure you're okay? You seem different today. I gave him a foggy smile. Different? Just tired. These headaches make it hard to think. They traded the same quick look as yesterday. They were assessing whether I was impaired enough to sign without grasping what it meant. Frank, this would just make it easier for us to help, Brooke said. You wouldn't have to carry it alone. That does sound nice, I said slowly, lifting a document with a shaky hand. But it's such a big decision. My head is pounding trying to think it through. Of course it's big, Jason said quickly. Take your time. Brooke's patience thinned. Wouldn't it be easier with family help? You trust us, don't you? Of course I trust you, I said, setting the papers down. But maybe I could sleep on it. Decide tomorrow when I'm clearer. The headaches make everything fuzzy. Another look between them. Brooke's smile tightened. Sure, Dad. We'll come by tomorrow morning and you can sign then. After they left, I let myself sag. The documents they left behind told the whole story. Power of attorney forms that would hand them control of my money, my medical decisions, and where I live. Everything Bob had warned me about, dressed up in legal language. 3 hours later, I was back in the office, mapping their moves like a general. The forms were meticulous, every signature flagged, every witness requirement highlighted. They did their homework. They forgot I did mine for 40 years. Amanda Carter picked up on the second ring. Good evening, Frank. What can I do for you? I need notary services tomorrow morning for some family financial documents. Can you come by around 10? Of course. What kind of documents? Power of attorney. It's a sensitive family situation, so I'd appreciate your discretion. You've got it. I'll bring my seal and journal. Perfect. Amanda's notarized dozens of my contracts. She recognizes pressure tactics when she sees them. Next call, Bob Hayes. Bob, can you stop by tomorrow at 10? I want to review that portfolio in detail. Absolutely, he said. After our chat about assistance programs, a thorough look is smart. I'll bring paperwork. Great. It'll be educational, I said. Educational indeed. A bank VP would witness exactly what Jason and Brooke were attempting, and his presence would give weight to anything we documented. Final call, Jason. I let my voice wobble. I've been thinking about those papers. You were right. I do need help. Dad, that's wonderful. Brooke will be so relieved. We can come first thing. I've arranged for a notary, so it'll be official. 10 o'clock? Perfect. And, Dad, thank you for trusting us, he added. Trust. I swallowed the bitterness. You're my family. Of course I trust you. I stood at the window, overlooking Linda's rose garden. Tomorrow would decide whether I kept tending it as a free man or watched it fade from an assisted living courtyard while Jason and Brooke split what Linda and I built. I pulled a yellow legal pad and sketched the schedule. 9:45 a.m. Amanda arrives, sets up. 10 o'clock. Bob arrives with a portfolio. 10:05. Jason and Brooke show up, ready for easy signatures. 10:10. Professional witnesses observe. 10:15. The truth comes out. The irony wasn't lost on me. They tried to steal me using process and paperwork. We'd used the same tools to expose them. 20 miles across town, I imagined Jason telling Brooke how cooperative I sounded, how the notary would make everything official, how close they were to protecting the money. They had no idea they were walking into a trap built by the same stubborn brain that built Walker Construction. I looked at me as stick figure family on my fridge beside a crooked house. Tomorrow would decide whether that child grows up with adults who protect her or with parents who teach her that loyalty has a price tag. I heard Linda again. Promise me you'll always take care of Mia. I intended to keep that promise. Monday came gray and cool. I'd barely slept, but when Amanda arrived at 9:45 with her seal and ledger, I was ready. Morning, Frank. Beautiful office, she said, setting up. This should be straightforward. Bob knocked at 10 on the dot, banker's portfolio in hand. Morning, Frank. Ready for that review? More ready than you know, I said, taking my chair as footsteps sounded at the front door. Jason and Brooke came in with confident smiles and their leather case. They paused when they saw Amanda and Bob, but Brooke recovered fast. How thoughtful to arrange professional help, she said smoothly. This will make everything so official. It will, I said, with none of yesterday's fog. Please, everyone sit. Jason sat across from me, still smiling. Dad, you sound better. More like your old self. Exactly like my old self. Sharp, observant, capable, I said, leaning forward. Which is why I have to say something before anyone signs anything. Brooke's pen froze. Frank, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong with me, I said evenly. But I'm fully aware of your plan. Silence stretched tight. Jason's smile thinned. Dad, what plan? We're here to help you. I know about your visit to Bob's bank on Tuesday. I know you researched guardianship, mental competency evaluations, and how to push paperwork through fast. Jason went pale. Brooke's mask cracked, then she reached for control. You're confused. We met with the bank about our own planning. Bob. I turned to him. Would you mind sharing the topics they asked about during their Tuesday appointment? Bob kept his tone professional. They asked detailed questions about conservatorship, documentation for declaring someone incompetent, and expedited court processes for emergency financial management. Amanda looked up from her journal, alert now. Mr. Walker, are you saying these power of attorney documents were prepared under false pretenses? I'm saying they planned to have me declared incompetent so they could take everything I've built for 40 years, I said. Jason finally found his voice, strangled and small. Dad, we were worried. Yesterday you seemed so confused. Yesterday was a performance. Today you're seeing me, not the act. I opened a drawer and slid out the folder I'd prepared. 247 transactions over 3 years. $70,000 in support. Every mortgage check, every car repair, every private school bill. For Mia, all documented. Brooke leaned in, desperation bleeding through. Those were legitimate family expenses. Conditioning payments, I said. Training me to say yes to bigger and bigger asks until I signed away my independence. I met her eyes. You studied how to institutionalize me while you carved up my assets. Amanda set her pen down. This is highly irregular. I need to understand the situation before notarizing anything. The situation, I said, is that my son and daughter-in-law spent weeks researching how to take my money and my decision-making, backed by fabricated confusion. Jason gripped the chair until his knuckles blanched. We just thought you might need help. Help managing $2. $3 million in liquid assets, 3 rentals, and a paid-off home. My voice hardened. Help that required emergency conservatorship. Brooke stood fast. You're twisting this. We love you. Love doesn't plot to steal someone's independence while they're healthy, I said. Bob spoke quietly. Frank, their questions were very specific. They knew terminology most families never touch unless they're planning something significant. Amanda nodded. Legitimate planning doesn't usually involve competency evaluations. Silence, except Jason's ragged breathing. He looked at me like he was finally seeing the man who built the thing he wanted to raid. What happens now, he whispered. Consequences, I said, standing, feeling every year and every ounce of experience. I pulled out the documents I drafted over the weekend. I'm changing my will today. My estate goes into an educational trust for Mia, I continued. Accessible when she turns 21. Jason lurched forward. Dad, please. We messed up, but we can fix it. The trust covers college, grad school if she wants it, and seed money to start her life. I spread the new will across the desk. Amanda, I'll need these witnessed and notarized. Brooke's voice cracked. Frank, you can't do this to your own family. I'm protecting my family, I said, from parents willing to steal her grandfather's independence to fund their lifestyle. Amanda reviewed the pages. These terms are very specific. There are conditions. If Jason and Brooke formally renounce any claim to my estate and show genuine change over the next year, I'll reconsider, I said. They'll have to prove they're the parents Mia deserves. Bob nodded as he witnessed my signature. The educational trust structure is excellent. She'll have opportunities most kids only dream about. Jason dropped his face into his hands. What does genuine change mean? How do we prove it? By earning a living that actually supports your family instead of leaning on me. By putting Mia first, her happiness over your wants. By showing me my granddaughter matters more than my bank balance. Brooke stood again, composure gone. How are we supposed to live without your support? The way millions do, I said. Honest work. Sensible spending. The mortgage help ends today. The car payments stop now. You're both adults with degrees. Figure it out. Amanda finished with practiced efficiency. Everything is legally binding, Mr. Walker. Keep these somewhere secure. My lawyer will have copies by afternoon, I said. After Amanda and Bob left, with firm handshakes and promises of discretion, the three of us sat in the kind of silence that hums. Jason looked broken. Brooke looked like she was doing math she didn't like. Anything else to say? I asked. Jason finally met my eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I am. Brooke said nothing. That told me plenty. Words are cheap, son, I said. The next year we'll decide if this family has a future. 3 hours later, there was a small knock. Mia stood there with her backpack still on. Grandpa, Mommy said you wanted to see me. I knelt like I had in the hallway 2 days earlier. Come on, sweetheart. We need to talk about some grown-up things. She curled beside me on the couch, already sensing the weight. Is this about what I told you? Partly, I said. Your mom and dad made some bad choices with money, and there have to be consequences. None of that changes how much I love you. Are they in trouble? They're going to work hard to be better parents, I said. And I want you to know your future is safe. I made special arrangements so you can go to any college you want and study anything that grabs you. Her eyes lit. Even veterinary school? That's really expensive. Especially veterinary school, I smiled. And if you switch and want engineering or teaching or your own business, there'll be money for that too. What about Mommy and Daddy? They're going to prove they can put you first. If they do, maybe we can heal. If they don't, you and I still have each other. She hugged me hard, and I felt Linda in that embrace. 3 generations hanging on through betrayal. Can we look at college brochures? Mia asked. I want to see what vet schools look like. Absolutely, I said, reaching for my laptop. We've got all the time in the world to plan your future. Outside, spring was sliding into summer, and Linda's roses were finally starting to bloom. If this story hit you, give it a like, subscribe, and tell me what part stuck with you in the comments. For the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for listening.